Good evening from London. Welcome to Piers Morgan Uncensored. Sir Keir Starmer may well be the next British Prime Minister. Labour leaders a hearty lead in the polls. After 13 years of Tory rule, with 3 Prime Ministers in one chaotic year recently, his path to power is clear. But he still has to prove he knows what matters to the British people. And today, I believe he made a massive miscalculation. He's reportedly briefed his top team to avoid talking about social issues, woke issues, because apparently the public doesn't care about them. He couldn't be more wrong. The public does care.
Keir Starmer, the political equivalent of tofu in a trench coat, has once again found himself absolutely pulverised, this time not by the Tories, not by the voters, not even by his own spine, which has been missing since 2015, but by Piers Morgan. Yes, that Piers. When the man who made a career out of arguing with breakfast cereal obliterates you with more clarity than your own manifesto, it might be time to consider that retirement plan you pretended you had before Brexit ruined everything.
Today, Starmer dramatically upped the ante by announcing that he will resign if police find him over the apparently illicit beer and curry soiree that he shared with his campaign staff. It's an amazingly high-stakes gamble, and of course would put Johnson under huge pressure to do the same if he does have to quit. But I suspect hypocrisy and lying might finish them both off, whatever happens. Boris broke the rules he set for the rest of us and then repeatedly lied about it. Starmer said that Boris must resign when police investigated. Now the same thing's happened to him, but he hasn't resigned. He just committed to resign if he gets fined.
Let's begin with Sir Keir's uncanny ability to promise everything and deliver less than a Royal Mail strike. The man campaigns like a revolutionary, but governs like a retired school governor who's just been given a new clipboard. And somehow he thinks Piers Morgan, the patron saint of shouty confusion, is going to be a soft sofa interview. Oh, bless his little wonky ambitions.
As you know, he's had 4 years. He can't tell you what he would do differently because he doesn't have a plan. And if you don't have a plan, you can't deliver any change. Nothing will change for the better, whereas I can do that for people.
Here's what I say at the end, is that Keir Starmer has resolutely not delivered on his pledges to do an interview with me for Piers Morgan Uncensored. You've now done 2 in the space of the last year. I appreciate that. I think you do put yourself up to be held to account more than he does.
Keir sat down across from Piers with all the confidence of a wet paper bag in a monsoon, thinking perhaps this was his moment to shine. Instead, it was more like watching someone try to explain algebra while being pelted with fish fingers. Every question turned into a tragic game of Twister, where Keir tried to dodge responsibility, spin left, lean centre right, but mostly just landed flat on don't know.
Why do you trust Vladimir Putin?
I trust him more than I trust Keir Starmer.
Really?
Yeah.
You trust Vladimir Putin?
I trust him more
than Keir Starmer?
I trust him more than I trust Joe Biden. I trust him more than I trust Donald Trump. Hold on, let me finish the statement.
I can't get past Starmer. You would trust Vladimir Putin more than Keir Starmer?
I wouldn't trust any of them if they told me what day it was today without checking. I don't trust automatically any politician. I check the facts. We lived through an era and were sacked because of the result of it, in which we were told certain things by our own leaders that turned out to be blatant lies.
Morgan didn't even need to try hard. Keir folded like a deck chair in a hurricane. 1 minute he's a proud Remainer, next he's stroking the Brexit unicorn like he's running a petting zoo of delusion. Ask him about policy and he lights up like a Christmas tree, burnt out, tangled and barely functioning. You could practically hear the sound of his convictions wheezing under the weight of his attempt to appeal to everyone and therefore no one.
The key legislation, because you're hiding behind the process.
No, the Labour Party
Why don't you do what the other candidates do and tell? Don't Labour members have a right, as they decide whether to vote for you or not? They want to know where your money's coming from.
I've been asked that many times. I've said it's coming from trade unions, from crowdfunding, from individual donations.
Who's your biggest donor?
It's coming from those 3. One of my biggest donors was put up on the website, I think, yesterday.
Right,
the man makes more U-turns than a drunk sat-nav. He was for nationalisation, then he wasn't, then he kind of was, but only if the stars aligned and Mercury was in retrograde. At this point, Keir Starmer's values are less of a political ideology and more of a choose-your-own-adventure book. Except every ending involves disappointment and an awkward apology on Twitter. Piers Morgan, a man who once lost a debate to a Greggs vegan sausage roll, still managed to carve Starmer open like a soggy Bakewell tart. He didn't ask trick questions, he asked basic human questions like, what do you believe in? And somehow Keir still looked like someone being accused of hiding the last biscuit. His reaction? A symphony of vague stammering, more pauses than a broken Spotify playlist, and an expression of perpetual regret.
Being constantly ransacked from Roald Dahl's books to the James Bond novels to avoid offending an imaginary cult. It means ordinary people having to hesitate before using perfectly normal words like woman or bonkers or mother because they've been browbeaten into thinking it'll cause offence. It means biological males can destroy women in sport, and gendered categories are being abolished at award ceremonies, resulting, as we saw at the Brits, in no women getting nominated at all. It means we're smeared as transphobic for thinking it's stark raving mad that a male rapist can identify as a woman to get a place in a woman's prison.
And let's talk about charisma. You know that feeling when you accidentally make eye contact with a printer while it's jammed? That's Keir Starmer's public persona. Bland, robotic, frequently confused about its own settings. When asked to speak from the heart, he went into a coma of policy jargon and robotic dodges. It's like trying to get warmth from a fridge by complimenting it. Even Piers looked baffled at one point, as if to say, is this the leader of the opposition or an undercooked rice pudding? Starmer has managed to turn holding the government to account into a live-action performance of, sorry, I'll get back to you after a committee review. Inspirational stuff if you're into wallpaper paste. And while we're on it, nothing screams conviction, quite like blinking into the abyss when asked what you stand for. Keir Starmer's answers are so non-committal they could ghost you mid-sentence. He talks like he's narrating a documentary about moss. Every sentence is dipped in ambiguity, rolled in indecision, and then gently pan-fried in the oil of irrelevance.
In the Jeremy Corbyn era, said he thought Corbyn would make a good Prime Minister. That's a blotch on his thought process, because Corbyn would have been a total mad far-left disaster. But interestingly, and I think encouragingly, Starmer is not so intransigent in his views that he's not prepared to change. The example being the issue of trans women in women's sport. You know, he started off by saying that, you know, women, all trans women are women and should be treated as such.
Even the violent rapists.
Which
Just, you know, it's a problem. Those edge cases.
You and I completely agree about this. It's obviously preposterous. But it's interesting to watch him change positions, and now he's at, I think he now says 99%.
The problem isn't that he lies, it's that he doesn't even commit to lying with confidence. Most politicians lie like it's jazz. Keir lies like he's forgotten the instrument. Ask him about the economy and he mutters something about fiscal responsibility. Ask him about immigration and suddenly he becomes a tribute act to Theresa May's broken robot dance. Piers Morgan, of all people, didn't even need to press hard. The man just existed and Keir began disintegrating like a rice cake in a puddle. Keir probably went home and practiced making eye contact with his own reflection, wondering where it all went wrong. Spoiler alert, it started when he thought having Sir before his name made him immune to scrutiny.
Britain signed a Brexit deal that built a trade barrier down the Irish Sea and marked off Northern Ireland from the rest of the UK, having repeatedly assured us that wouldn't happen, would be totally unacceptable. It was a fudge then and a betrayal, and it was never going to stick. And nationalists have now moved to exploit that vacuum. If the UK is going to stay together, and I hope it does, it needs strong leaders in Westminster who earn the public's trust. Instead, we can't trust the current crop to run away.
There's something truly majestic about a man who builds a political platform out of bold promises, then ditches them faster than a Tory minister caught texting lobbyists after midnight. Keir Starmer campaigns like a man shopping in the ambition aisle, only to get to the checkout and realise he left his spine in the car. And still, he's convinced he's the adult in a room full of toddlers. If that's adulthood, then yes, bring back the chaos goblin energy of Ed Miliband, because at least he had the decency to go down in meme-worthy flames. That bacon sandwich gave more to public discourse than Keir has in 3 entire manifestos. Seriously, how do you exude less energy than a man who once tried to eat breakfast like he was diffusing a bomb? Keir Starmer has managed to make political irrelevance an art form. He's the human equivalent of plain yogurt complaining that the water is too spicy. Watching him next to Piers Morgan, Piers, the guy who's never met a controversy he couldn't wrestle in a kiddie pool, was like watching a man get outperformed by a megaphone set to mildly snide.
All of the information, got all the evidence, not only that was available at the time, but all the evidence that's available since then. National security has to come first. I think the decision by the Home Secretary was the wrong decision, and I think it was a rushed decision. And I think it left out of account the interests of the newly born child who's tragically died.
A lot of people have escaped.
Keir's leadership style could best be described as clipboard with a superiority complex. He leads like someone who read about leadership in a pamphlet once and immediately forgot it. He acts tough in press releases, but ask him a real question and he folds faster than a pop-up tent in a windstorm. One stern glare from Piers and Keir started blinking in Morse code for "please let this be over." And bless his beige soul, he still thinks elections are won through osmosis. Just stand near the concept of not being Boris and voila, votes. But being not Boris is not enough when you are also not present, not exciting, and increasingly not alive looking. Boris was a walking political explosion with hair. Keir is a political screensaver. If he walked into a pub, the jukebox would pause out of sheer awkwardness.
It's the job of a leader to inspire all of the people to have trust in him, not just some of the people, not just the people he likes, not just the people on his party or the people he wants. It is his job as a leader to have every single person in the country believe that he cares about the issue and he's doing something actively to fix it. Instead, what Keir did was stand up and do the absolute opposite. Shut down any legitimate concerns, tell people they don't have a voice, tell people nothing's going to change, is going to stay exactly the way it is. And let me tell you something. I want to make this very clear. There's a lot of people in the world who would rather go to jail and have a warm bed and 3 square meals a day than watch their children die. There's a lot of people who would rather go to jail than watch their society collapse in real time around them. There's a lot of people who would really rather go to jail than feel unsafe to walk the street at night ever again. These are people who have lived in the same place for a very long time. They have a vested interest in this geographical location. And without political solutions being offered, I don't know how hubristic you must be to sit and expect anything other than what we've seen.
Labour under Keir feels like a roller coaster park that only offers safety briefings. You show up, expecting action, thrills, maybe a policy loop-de-loop, and all you get is someone handing you a helmet and reading from a compliance manual. When Piers poked him, he didn't twist the knife, he just lifted the lid and found there was nothing inside but a sigh and an apologetic shrug. And those dramatic pauses Keir insists on before every answer. They're not deep, they're not wise, they're just his brain buffering like it's waiting for dial-up internet to connect. Somewhere inside his skull you can hear the gentle hum of a fax machine trying to fax itself. The worst part? He genuinely believes this centrist mulch is leadership. He thinks blandness is strategy. He's like a motivational speaker for people who gave up before they even started. Every time he opens his mouth, it's like watching a TED Talk sponsored by lukewarm tap water.
The one person I've not interviewed is Sir Keir Starmer or any of his senior shadow cabinet ministers. What are they scared of? The Labour Party is based 2.8 miles away from his studio. His front benchers have an open invitation to come on to debate all of this stuff, as well as their plans for running the country. But so far, they've repeatedly rejected all invitations. If you want to run the country, you should really stop ducking interviews, because the last guy that ran the country, he ducked interviews. Let me take a little reminder.
And God help us all when he tries to do passion. You can see the moment his inner scriptwriter kicks in. Time to be authentic. He furrows his brow, adjusts his tie, and out comes a sentence so beige you forget what language it was in. It's not that Keir doesn't have fire, it's that he stores it in a locked cupboard labelled "break glass in case of polling crisis." Morgan sat there, eyebrows practically doing the conga, as Keir tried to convince him, and presumably himself, that he's ready to lead. Lead what exactly? A book club where no one's allowed to express an opinion? A mime troupe of centrists? The only thing he's leading is a nationwide nap. Let's not even touch his vision, because there isn't one. His grand plan for Britain appears to be a bit less bad, possibly, depending on feedback. If your idea of transformation is swapping one uninspiring man in a suit for another uninspiring man in a slightly different suit, then Keir's your guy. But if you want leadership with teeth, you might as well elect a Roomba. At least it moves in a direction.
How can you be a leader if you can't even say what a woman is? Who's going to follow you? Who's going to take your lead? What kind of person are you? Sir Keir Starmer is very impressive in many ways, but he just refuses to say what a woman is. Rishi Sunak, to his credit, when I interviewed him, immediately said it's an adult human female. Right, it's not difficult, it's not a trick question. That's the answer.
Morgan finally wrapped up, probably wondering if he'd just interviewed the ghost of a filing cabinet, an ancient dusty relic with just enough hinges left to creak out words like values and policy framework in the key of beige. Keir Starmer drifted out of that studio like a sentient question mark, still unsure of what just occurred, but quite satisfied that at no point had he used any adjectives that might provoke a reaction. That's his political brand. Say absolutely everything and nothing simultaneously, and do it in a tone that could put a metronome to sleep. Keir doesn't aim to lead, he aims to gently not offend. He tiptoes across the minefield of British politics in orthopaedic shoes, clutching a laminated list of talking points and hoping no one asks him anything off script. His proudest achievement to date, managing to complete an entire interview without expressing an actual opinion. That's not strategy, it's interpretive mime. He's basically a very polite screensaver with eyebrows.
Things that people criticised Keir Starmer for when he became Labour leader are now becoming electoral assets. They said he was too serious. They said he was a bit on the boring side. They said, that he was a lawyer. But when you have a shambolic Prime Minister, somebody who's loose with the truth, and somebody who prides himself on being able to be a buffoon, then actually, as we've seen in the pandemic, that can be a catastrophic thing for a country. And so I think that Keir Starmer and his qualities are becoming more appealing to the electorate.
To sum it up, Piers Morgan, yes, Piers, who yells for a living, showed up to what should have been a political joust with nothing but a spoon and a smirk, and still left Keir Starmer curled up in a puddle of his own existential despair. No shouting, no table slamming, just quiet, undeniable contact with reality, which, as it turns out, is Keir's kryptonite. Forget hard questions, Keir disintegrates at the mere suggestion of certainty. He's not a politician, not really. He's more of a human holding pattern, a one-man buffering wheel for the nation's future. Press him and everything slows down. Momentum, decision-making, hope. It's like someone paused the country and forgot where they put the remote. Even gravity looks at him and says, I'll take 5.
Well, I've interviewed Starmer a few times.
Yeah.
I did him for my Life Story show, which is like a 2.5-hour interview. And I think, probably like you probably believe, that if you interview someone for 2.5 hours, they can't hide the entire time.
Yeah.
You're going to work out really what they're like. I think he's fundamentally a decent guy.
Yeah.
I think he's a kind of regular guy. There's nothing particularly flamboyant or special about him. He's a self-made man. He had a very tough upbringing. His mother was very ill for a very long period of time, and he effectively was her carer a lot of the time. A bit disenfranchised from his dad, no money. And he rose to become the top of the legal profession, Director of Public Prosecutions, the top lawyer in the country.
Do we need another round of soulless PR campaigns written by interns who think engagement means nodding without blinking? Absolutely not. Do we need another robotic policy unveiling where every answer sounds like it's been sanitized in a lab? God, no. We need a leader. Someone who actually believes in something other than the sanctity of polling data. Someone who can make a decision without checking if the Sun approves. Meanwhile, Starmer is busy attending yet another focus group, sipping lukewarm tea and nodding earnestly at someone explaining their views on wheelie bins.
You are the bad person. You must be cancelled. At the heart of this is freedom of speech, as Elon Musk said, freedom of expression and freedom of thought. Without that, there is no democracy. Perhaps the real reason why Sir Keir Starmer doesn't want us to focus on so-called woke issues is because of the problem he's had in answering simple questions.
If you're looking for bold action, keep walking. If you're looking for a man who'll write a 45-page manifesto just to say maybe, he's already outside, clutching a spreadsheet like it's a teddy bear. Keir Starmer couldn't lead a conga line at a funeral. And worse, he'd probably need a 3-day strategy session to decide whether it should be clockwise or anti-clockwise. And Piers, he just did what the public's been doing for years. Looked at Keir, asked seriously, and watched the man combust under the pressure of having to show a personality. A tragic symphony of mediocrity, brought to you live on national television.